Today we will in this class we will discuss about thermocouple materials, and this class is for third semester diploma electrical students. So students, this in this chapter or in this exercise we will understand some of the special materials which are used in the field of electrical engineering. Now, thermocouple material are when two wires of different metals are joined together and EMF exists across the junction, which is dependent on the type of metals or alloys used and also directly proportional to the temperature of the junction. When one tries to measure this EMF, more junctions are to be made, which also will give rise to EMFs. When all the junctions are at the same potential or the temperature, the resultant EMF will be 0. The resultant EMF is proportional to the temperature difference of the junction and is called thermoelectric EMF. So student, you should understand the resultant EMF produced. Why the resultant EMF will be produced? Because here we are using two different metals. As a result, there will be a difference in potential, and the resultant EMF is proportional to the temperature difference of the junction and is called thermoelectric EMF. Now the EMF produced by a thermocouple is very small, but it can be measured with reasonable accuracy by a sensitive moving coil millivoltmeter. So the meter or the measuring instrument used is very sensitive, and it is known as your millivoltmeter, which can be calibrated in terms of temperature. Now students, this word calibrated you should understand. So I should also make you understand the word calibrated. Calibrated means to measure something as comparison to a standard substance. Suppose in terms of electricity, let me make you understand. Suppose for 1 ampere of current which when passed through a circuit produces some heating effect. Suppose 5-degree rise in temperature is caused by the application of 1 ampere. Let us assume, I am giving you just an example, but 1 ampere may or may not produce the exact amount of electric heat. So if 1 ampere is producing 5 degree centigrade of heat, then when we use another 1 ampere of current, now it has been increased from 1 ampere to 2 ampere, the amount of rise in temperature is again 5. So I can calibrate a scale where the ampere, suppose it was the ampere scale where it has been written 1 ampere, 2 ampere, 3 ampere and so on. So I will just omit this scale. In a new scale, the amount of current taken by the same 5 degree centigrade temperature has to be replaced. Now for 1 ampere I will write 5 degree centigrade. Similarly for 2 amperes I will write 10 degree centigrade. So similarly one thing has to be compared with the another thing. So by comparing, if we make a scale or we produce some calibrated scale, then we can call it as a calibration. So here also this millivoltmeter, which can be calibrated in terms of temperature. So this voltage is now calibrated in terms of your temperature. As in my example which we have discussed, their current was calibrated in terms of temperature. Here the voltage is calibrated in terms of temperature. Now the materials to be used will depend upon the range of temperature to be measured. Now there are some materials, let us discuss them. Material used for thermocouples are at cold junction, that is 10 degree centigrade, are copper constantan, that is minus 200 to 400 degree centigrade. The EMF at 500 degree centigrade in millivolt is 27.6. Similarly for iron and constantan, it is 0 to 900, 26.7. Nickel or Nickel chromium, it is 0 to 1100 degree centigrade, and the EMF will be 10 millivolt. For platinum rhodium, it is the temperature range is from 500 to 1400 degree centigrade, and the EMF is 4.5 degree 4.5 millivolt. So thermocouples can be used for the measurement of temperature. Depending upon the range of temperature to be measured, proper material are to be chosen for a thermocouple. So students, for using thermocouples, the measurement of temperature, proper metal should be chosen so as to get a better result, or the reading should be accurate and it will yield some good output. So if one junction called the cold junction is held at an unknown constant temperature, the EMF produced becomes measure of temperature of the other junction. This principle of thermocouple pyrometer. Now we'll discuss about bimetals. A bimetal is made of two metallic strips of unlike metal alloys with different coefficient of thermal expansion. At a certain temperature, the strip will bend and actuate a switch or a lever of a switch. The bimetal can be heated directly or indirectly. When heated, the element bends so that the metal, which with the greater coefficient of expansion is on the outside of the arc formed, while that of with smaller coefficient is on the inside. When cooled, the element bends in the other direction. So students, the bimetallic strips are used in electrical apparatus and in devices such as relays and regulators. For example, in order to maintain a constant temperature in a heater, a basic bimetallic regulator may be used. So, by using a bimetallic regulator, we can control the switching on and off of a device. So a bimetal relay or release can be used for overload protection of electric motors or any electric circuit. In such an arrangement, the electric circuit is passed through the bimetallic strip. If the current rises above its setting, the strip will be heated enough to bend and break the circuit directly and through an intermediate relay. So now we'll discuss about soldering materials. Now commercial solders, however, contain an alloy of two or more metals of low melting point used for base metal is known as soldering. The alloy used for joining the metals is called solder. So the an alloy of two or more metals of low melting point used for base metal is known as soldering. The alloy used for joining the metals is called solder. The most common solder is composed of 50% lead and 50% tin. Its melting point is about 185 degree centigrade. The tensile strength is 385 kg per centimeter square, and electrical conductivity is about 10% that of copper. Many commercial solders, however, contain large percentage of lead and some antimony with less tin. Good quality solders for electrical joints should have at least 40% tin. So students, first of all, let us understand what is this soldering material. So we have already discussed that the material should have the ability. If the material or the conducting material do not possess this soldering ability, then we cannot go for extension of the material, or where there is I mean the line has to be increased, we cannot go for increase in the line. So we have to take care that whether the material is properly solderable or not. So soldering is a method by which the metals or the conductors can be joined. So by joining, we can increase its length of usage, or the circuit can be increased. The length I mean the length of the circuit can be increased. So for a good solders, it should have at least 40% of tin. As the electrical conductivity of lead is only about half that of tin, for proper soldering, flux is used in soldering process. The the application of flux serves to remove oxides from the surface of the solders. So by application of flux, the oxides are removed from the surface. They deoxidize the metals at the time of soldering element is added. For ordinary soldering, zinc chloride is a common flux. So the flux used is zinc chloride. So you should remember the term zinc chloride, because you may require sometimes that what is the name of the material used for flux. So it is zinc chloride. Yes. Now, tallow, rosin, or olive oil may also be used for soldering. Sometimes flux is incorporated in the solder wires itself. In such a case, no extra flux is necessary. So there are solder students where the flux or the solder is incorporated with flux. So you do not need any further flux, so that it can be soldered without the using of flux, because it is already having flux in its coating. Now, solders are of two types: soft solders and hard solders. Soft solders are composed of lead and tin in various proportions. Hard solders may be any solder with a melting point above that of lead tin solders. Common hard solders are silver solders, aluminum solders, copper zinc solders, etc. So the names of the solders should be remembered for your semester exams. You should remember these solders. Hard solders have high melting point and therefore are to be used for metals which can withstand high temperature. The most important application of soft solders is in electronic device, and of hard solders in power apparatus for making permanent connection. Solders and fluxes are for aluminum cable joining. Now, what are the solders and fluxes for joining aluminum cables? Because already we know that aluminum cables are difficult to get to solder them, right? So how we will solder them? Let us discuss. Aluminum solders or aluminum cannot be soldered of using conventional solders and flux in view of extremely tough oxide film present in the surface of aluminum. London Associate Fry's Metal Foundries develop a suitable solder and flux for joining the aluminum, and as a result Alka P solder was developed. So by using Alka P solder, we can join aluminum conductor also. Alka P solder is prepared under special process from exceptionally high purity raw materials, that is flux. It is improved variety of organic flux which is used with Alka P for aluminum cable joining. This is on composition at a temperature little below the joining temperature, approximately 300 degree centigrade, removing the refractory oxide from the strands of the core and makes the surface receptile to solder. Because of low specific gravity of the flux residues, they are replaced by a solder, forming a sound metal mm, to metal contact. It possesses an added advantage over an inorganic type reaction fluxes and welding techniques in such a in as much as the soldering temperature can be maintained. The temperature is about 300 degrees centigrade, and in Fahrenheit it will be 600 degree Fahrenheit, thus avoiding the damage to the proper impregnation and the insulation. Now we'll discuss about fuse and fuse material. A fuse is a protective device which consists of thin wire or strip. This wire or strip is replaced with the circuit. It has to be protected. Now students, this fuse has to be inserted always in series, because by the help of the fuse only the circuit will have a longer life. Why? Because if there is any fault case or short circuit case, this fuse will blow out and will save your circuit. So never bypass any fuse. You should use the proper rating of the fuse also. So this wire or strip is placed with the circuit. It has to protect so that electric current flows through it. When this current is too large, the temperature of the wire or strip will increase till the wire or strip melts, thus breaking the circuit and interrupting the supply. Now, the current is cut off by the fuse as follows. How the current is cut off? Let us discuss now. Upon melting of the wire, the metal ions form an arc and constitute a conducting path through which the current continuously flow continuously. In order to quench the arc, the resistance in the path or the arc path must rise to such an extent that available voltage is no longer able to sustain the arc. So students, we have to make this arc quench or extinguish, so as to this voltage will no longer will be able to sustain the arc. For a proper quenching of the arc in a fuse, the following measures can be taken. So what are the following measures to be taken so as to quench the arc, or that the arc will no longer exist? Now the material chosen for a fuse wire is what that whose metal ions after melting have low conductivity, like silver or an alloy of silver are such materials. If the temperature of the arc path is kept low, its resistance and therefore the drop along the arc will be high. Due to less mobility of the metal ions and electrons, the cooling of the arc in a fuse can be achieved by embedding the fuse wire in quartz. It can be quartzsand, as is done in cartridge and HRC fuses. So what are these cartridge and HRC fuses? You will understand in your higher classes. You just have to mention the names of cartridge and HRC fuses. We will have elaborate explanation about these fuses. So for the time being, you should only remember that it has been done in cartridge and your HRC fuses. Now in higher the pressure of the gas in which the arcing take place, the higher will be the required voltage. So this required voltage is for sustaining the arc. This is achieved by putting the melting wire in an explosion tight enclosure in which a high pressure is automatically built by the heat produced by the arc. Now, from the discussion, it is evident that a rewirable fuse is not at all suited to quench an arc properly because any type of wire can be used. No proper cooling of the arc can be provided and no pressure can build up. Although still widely used in this country, rewirable fuse should be discarded because in our country we use this rewirable fuse because it is very cheap also. Its cost is not very high, easily available also, easy to maintain also. Yes, though this rewirable fuse also have some demerits, but due to their easily installation, easy maintenance, and cost wise they are also very less, so we are going for this rewirable fuse. So they should be discarded and instead cartridge fuses should be used. The figure 7.1 shows the cross section of a cartridge fuse. So this is a typical view of a cartridge fuse which you can see now. Inside a cartridge fuse you have indicating disc, porcelain, quartz, fuse element, indicating wire. So this is the total one, and you have a gypsum also, some quantity of gypsum is there. So it is the cross section view of a cartridge fuse. Now a fuse material should possess the following properties. So what are the properties of a fuse material? So before understanding its property, let us know why should we know the properties of a fuse material. Because because uh, because if the fuse material chosen by us or you is not proper, it will have an adverse effect, and due to this adverse effect we will suffer. What kind of sufferings will be there? Either loss of human or loss of machine. So we should not bypass fuses. So the properties are: a fuse material should possess low resistivity. This means thin wires can be used, which will have less metal vapor after melting in the wire. Because after all, when the fuse melts only, then the circuit will be interrupted. So melting, after melting, there will be time for metal vapors, and after melting of the arc, less metal vapor in the arc gives lower conductivity and thus making quenching of the arc easier. Now, low conductivity. The first one was your low resistivity, second one is your low conductivity. So, low conductivity of the metal vapor itself, low melting point. Now, the material which we have chosen for fuse material should possess low melting, also low melting point. This means that the temperature of the fuse material for normal currents stay at a low value. Originally, only lead was used as fuse material because of its low melting point, but has the resistivity, but the resistivity of lead is high. Thick wires are required for rewirable fuses. Alloys of tin and lead or tinned copper wires are commonly used. In cartridge fuse, silver and silver alloys are used in fuse of lower ratings, and copper alloys are used in fuses of higher rating. So, student, by choosing proper rating of fuse, we can make the machine and the operator safe, thereby increasing the lifespan of the machine higher. And we should never bypass the fuse because it is a protective device, and by following its proper rating and replacing by a proper fuse, we can achieve a healthy operation of the machine. So with this, we conclude today's class. Thank you for watching, students.